semester. This will be about the historical geography of tung oil production in Mississippi. Now, I'll be going over the objective of the whole paper, to the methods I used to obtain my information, as well as what I learned, and ensuring that my research topic conclusion fits with my academic structures by demonstrating and utilizing the information I obtained and processed and made into a map that tells the story of my research project. And that'll be at the very end. So first of all, I want to start on the ecology of the plant, and located on the right of this first slide is the tung oil tree. Now, the tung oil tree is very distinct because it has a cluster of flowers that are white and pink in the middle, or white on the outside, pink in the middle. Their leaves are heart-shaped, and they produce a fruit that looks like this. Now, it could be round to a pear shape. And tung oil trees, when they first produce the fruit, they're lime green, and you can see one at the right-hand corner of this picture. Now, whenever the nuts mature, they turn into a brownish to purple color. They then fall off the tree when they are ready to be harvested, and from there they are transported to a drying facility. Now, these drying facilities wait about a couple weeks, and then they're transported to mills, which crush them and turn them to oil and are further processed. Now, these trees grow up to about 40 feet tall and about 20 feet wide. Now, looking at this picture to the right, this is a tung oil tree located in the famous Pearl River County, Mississippi, and it is totally in bloom. And this picture was probably taken in the late 1930s to 1940s. And you can find this photo on the Mississippi Gulf Coast Heritage. Now, the objective of this paper is to find the geographic location of production, the tung oil production. This would include the mills and where all the orchards were grown or farms. And in order to obtain that information, I have to go over the history. So hopefully this won't take too long. I'll try to be as fast as I can. Starting off in 1905, we have China actually giving the Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, its first tung oil seed. But it was deemed unsuccessful due to the fact that they distributed these seeds to generally up north, and the climates were not suitable for the tree to where they will freeze. And the soils, if that didn't kill them, the soils did. The soils were not well drained, and the trees formed root rot. So the Consul General Wilcox from Hankow, China, sent another batch of seeds to the U.S., and luckily they were grown and distributed to some of the southern states, but most importantly in Florida. They were first known to successfully mature and produce fruit in Tallahassee, Florida. Now, when they discovered this, they began to send more seeds to the southern states, which included Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Florida. Now, specifically, the cities that received the seeds in Mississippi were Biloxi, Landon, and Lucedale. What made these states suitable for growth, or specifically Mississippi, was the soil. The soil was known as a self-draining soil, and consisted of sand and clay, to where when we received enough rainfall, it wouldn't develop, the trees would not develop root rot, and therefore they wouldn't die. Also, we had a low rate of freezing for our winters. We generally have warm winters, and so we were like the least risk case of the tree dying. Now, later on, generally by the 1920s is when we started growing trees in Mississippi. We were a little late on the bandwagon, but it only took us to the 1940s to actually become the leading producer of tung oil trees in the States. We started producing about 20,000 tons that were worth over $2 million by 1946. And we were doing so well that they started laboratories that were modifying the tung trees to produce more. And of course, it came out with 4. And out of those 4, the most prize was named Lambton, and it grew more fruit, and the fruits were heavier and producing more oil. And there was 8 mills in total that were created on the Tung Belt. 2 of those were located in Poplarville and Picayune, and they were on each side of the state and were strategically placed due to the orchards or farms around them. Now, Mississippi did have over 2 million trees planted at the time, and we had a couple of people who grew these trees. Now, the first individual is named Charles Rowland. Now, Charles Rowland, Mr. Rowland, deemed himself the apostle of the tung, and he was famously known as flying around in his plane saying that tung oil would be the salvation for the U.S., and he grew about 9,000 acres. Now, L.O. Crosby actually planted 35,000 tung trees in Mississippi, but they actually formed a pine company called Goodyear Yellow Pine in 1917, and they bought the Hermitage, which is known now the Hermitage, a house in Picayune, and they based out their tung oil orchard out there, and it is now a historical landmark in Mississippi because they actually played a big part in the production of tung oil. But also, the reason why there are so many orchards and farms in specifically Pearl River County was because it used to be a timberland forest of longleaf pines, and these companies back then just decimated the forest, and the field was left bare, and they didn't know what to do with it. So this company was actually going to plant satsumas, which I'm not sure if y'all know, is like a dark orange. It's really hard to explain. It's like a dark orange fruit that blooms once a year, and that actually comes from Japan, but the tung oil hype took over so quickly that they decided not to go with the satsuma orchard, that they were going to go with tung oil. Now, what's really important is during this time span of the 1920s to the 1969 is the 2 wars, World War I, World War II. And the reason why tung oil was so popular was because it was used in a variety of things. It was used in varnishes and paints, to wire covering. They could take out chemicals from the tung oil, so it's made like in rubber, and they actually the military widely used it. So it was being used so much we had to import more from China, and we could never really keep up with demand. But also due to the war, that's actually what drove up the cost by 50%, and after both the wars they dropped to like it was like negative 60%. Now, to contribute to the tung oil production, quite a bit of organizations were made, which there are a couple that were like really important. One, there was about 5 organizations that were made, and they were called the National Tung Oil Marketing Cooperative, the American Tung Oil Association, the Research Development League, and the Pan American Tung Research Development League. Now, the Pan Research Tung Development League was the most important out of all of these because it actually formed the School of Polymers and High Performance Materials, founded in 1972 at the University of Southern Mississippi. Now, what was important about the Tung Oil Association was that was founded in 1924. It was made up of 32 members, which dealt with paints and varnishes, and the most famous person in that group was Sherwin Williams, which is, a product we can find today. I mean, it's commonly found in the paint stores. And I thought that was like really important. Now, let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so like in the 1950s, we started getting temperature drops, in which, it didn't harm, it killed some of the plants, but it wasn't significant enough to deem, a lot of damage. But what really was bad was in 1969 when Hurricane Camille hit, and I made a map of that. But really, in 1969, when Hurricane Camille hit, it really devastated the coast. It wiped out 2/3 of Pearl River with the orchards, and they just, they could not recover. Like the states couldn't, the counties couldn't recover, and that's why I have it in red. I'll go over this map in a second, but really after 1969, from the period of the 1940s to the 1970s, land taxes started increasing, as well as the productions, which wasn't too bad before Hurricane Camille, but as soon as these trees were wiped out, it was pretty much a done deal, because it takes about 4 to 5 years to fully mature a tree, and and that's when it starts to produce fruit, and the cost really outweighed the risks at this point, to where the orchards just died out, and the trees can still be found in pretty much in Pearl River. They're really common, actually, but I think if you travel more up north, you can find them, but they're considered invasive species, and quite let's see, I think we are the only state that sort of is concerned of the tree, but more so in Florida and Texas, because the nut is actually really toxic. It can kill you, and it can kill a dog. So you don't want these trees just growing out there, because they're harmful. So what's happening is the Hermitage, sorry, not the Hermitage, there is a laboratory that opened and they are actually creating a new tree, which is called the Annabella. Now, the Annabella is said to produce very little fruit. It's a very promising specimen, and they're trying to breed out the fruit that it produces so they can bring back the tung oil tree, because they feel the need that it was a significant part of our history that has been forgotten. I didn't even know that there was tung oil orchards down here, but let's see, yeah. But also I have on here, I'll start explaining the map. So we can see on the left side that I've created it to where it shows all the growth that was in Mississippi. I know it's very generalized, but according to some maps, there weren't really specific locations. And pretty much a lot of the farmers down here grew tung oil trees, and to where there's only the really big contributors, like the yellow pine company had major orchards down here, and generally the most acres were in Pearl River County, and that's why that is highlighted. But obviously, I can see that there's 2 mills on here, and they're marked as Picayune and Loosedale. But also I have the Hermitage, and that actually survived through both the hurricanes, luckily, and I thought was of significance. But one of the research, there it is, the Thad Cochran Southern Horticulture Research Laboratory in Poplarville is the one responsible for trying to bring back the tung trees, and they were actually known as the USDA Tung Oil Research Station at one point. But it is now commonly found on the side of a road, which I'm actually eager to go find. But I believe that, I believe that all the methods that I used were concise with my research. So I went to the USM library in order to obtain a lot of my information. I had help from the librarian, and she sent me a lot of articles. I also found JustStore, which was an amazing journal article site, and I found a lot of information and maps that was able to aid me in making this map that I previously made, and all the readings combined. I believe that I made a map equivalent to my conclusion, to where, we shouldn't be growing these tung trees anymore, because since Hurricane Katrina, there was talk of bringing back tung oil trees, but Hurricane Katrina hit, and that was a definite no, because if we had another devastating storm like that, it would wipe out our tung orchards, and that would be probably millions of dollars nowadays. And I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I hope it was informative. Thank you.